The stars were quiet that night. But quiet does not always mean safe. Outpost Kestrel 7 was not a big place. It was a small station floating in deep space, far from Earth, far from any major civilization. 212 people lived there. Scientists, engineers, doctors, and a few security officers. They were not soldiers, they were not warriors. They were just people doing their jobs, studying space, mapping stars, sending data back to Earth. It was a boring job most of the time, but they liked it. Commander Sarah Voss was the leader of Kestrel 7. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and calm brown eyes. She had been running the outpost for 3 years. She knew every person on the station by name. She knew who drank too much coffee, who stayed up late reading, who cried when they missed their family. She was not just their commander. She was their home. In a way. On the last normal day, she was sitting in her office reviewing star charts. Her coffee was cold as always. She never had time to finish a hot cup. One of her young engineers, a boy named Marcus, knocked on her door. "Commander," he said, "we are picking up some strange energy readings near Sector 9. It is probably nothing, but I thought you should know." Sarah looked at the readings. She frowned slightly. "Keep monitoring it," she said, "and let me know if it changes." Marcus nodded and left. Sarah looked back at her cold coffee. She took a sip. She did not know it then, but that was the last normal moment Kestrel 7 would ever have. What lived in Sector 9? Sector 9 was a quiet part of space. At least, that is what humans thought. But it was not quiet. It was watched. The Vreth had been watching Sector 9 for 300 years. The Vreth were an ancient species. They were tall with dark blue skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were gold and did not blink. They had destroyed 11 civilizations before humanity even learned to fly. They were proud. They believed they were the top of all life in the galaxy, and in many ways, they were right. Their ships were massive and powerful. Their weapons could crack a moon. Their military had never lost a war, and they did not like strangers in their space. Sector 9 was not officially Vreth territory. No treaty said so. No galactic law said so. But the Vreth believed it was theirs, and the Vreth believed that what they thought was truth. When Marcus's energy reading appeared on the Vreth scanners, a Vreth commander named Drethkal looked at it for a long time. He was old, even by Vreth standards. His 4 arms were crossed behind his back. He stood in front of a giant window on his warship, staring at the tiny light of Kestrel 7 in the distance. "A human station," said one of his officers. "Yes," said Drethkal. "They have entered near our watching zone." "They did not cross the line, Commander," said the officer carefully. Drethkal was silent for a moment. "They are close enough," he said. The officer looked uncomfortable but said nothing. No one argued with Drethkal. The last officer who argued with him was no longer on the ship. "Send a message to the High Council," said Drethkal. "Tell them I am going to make an example of these humans." He paused, then added, "The galaxy is watching, let them watch." The attack. It happened at 3:47 in the morning, station time. Most people on Kestrel 7 were sleeping. Sarah was awake as usual. She never slept well in space. She was reading a report when the alarm went off. Not a small alarm, the full red alarm. Every light on the station turned red. Every screen showed the same thing. 12 Vreth warships coming in fast, and "All stations, wake up now," Sarah said into the intercom, her voice steady. "This is not a drill." Marcus was already running to his console. His hands were shaking, but his eyes were focused. "Commander, they are not slowing down," he said. "They are locking weapons." Sarah stood very still. In her years in space, she had never seen a Vreth warship in person. She had read about them. She had studied them. She knew what those weapons could do. She also knew Kestrel 7 had no real defenses. They had small shield generators, enough for a meteor strike, not enough for this. "Open a communication channel," she said. "Try every frequency. Tell them we are a science outpost. We are not military. We are not a threat." The communications officer, a young woman named Dana, typed fast. "Channel open, Commander," she said. Sarah leaned toward the microphone. "This is Commander Sarah Voss of Earth Science Outpost Kestrel 7. We are a peaceful research station. We have no weapons. We request communication. We mean no harm to..." The first blast hit before she finished the sentence. The station shook like a toy, people fell, lights exploded. Somewhere deep in the station, something caught fire. "Shields at 14%, Marcus called out. "They are firing again." The second blast was worse. Half the station went dark. Sarah grabbed a railing to stay standing. "Emergency protocol," she said, her voice still calm even as the world fell apart around her. "Everyone to escape pods. Move now. Move fast." But there were not enough escape pods, and the Vreth ships were surrounding them. The attack lasted 11 minutes. 11 minutes to destroy 212 people, 212 lives gone. When the Vreth ships left, Kestrel 7 was dark and broken, floating silently in the cold of space. And on what was left of the main deck floor, Drethkal had left a message, burned into the metal with a cutting beam. In clear human language, it said, "Humans are weak. We will come for your home next." 72 hours of silence. For 3 days, Earth heard nothing from Kestrel 7. At first, people thought it was a communication failure. Those happen sometimes. Then they thought maybe the signal relay broke. That happened too. But after 72 hours, no one was making excuses anymore. The rescue ship ESS Halcyon was sent. It was a fast ship, a good crew. Captain James Okafor commanded it. He was a big man, quiet and serious. He had done rescue missions before. He knew what missing signals usually meant. But he hoped he was wrong this time. He was not wrong. When the Halcyon arrived at the coordinates of Kestrel 7, the captain stood on the bridge and looked at his screen for a long time. He did not speak. No one spoke. The outpost was destroyed, not just damaged, not just broken, destroyed. Pieces of it floated slowly through space, parts of walls, parts of equipment, a coffee mug drifting alone in the dark. One of the young crew members on the Halcyon started to cry quietly. Captain Okafor did not cry. He just stood there, looking. "Search for survivors," he said finally, his voice low and flat. They searched for 6 hours. They found no survivors. They found pieces of the station. They found personal items, a book, a photograph, a small toy someone had kept on their desk. And they found the floor panel, the one with the burned message. One of the crew photographed it and sent it back to Earth without a word. The photograph arrived at the Earth Defense Council at 9:12 in the morning. By 9:15, every senior official on the planet had seen it. "Humans are weak. We will come for your home next." The world reacts. The news broke within hours, all across Earth. People watched their screens. Some were afraid, some were angry, some sat in silence, not knowing what to feel. The Vreth, everyone knew who they were. You learned about them in school. An ancient species, proud and powerful. 11 civilizations gone because of them. And now they had killed 212 humans. Scientists, people with families, people with names. In the streets of cities across Earth, people gathered. Some held candles. Some held signs. Some just stood together, shoulder to shoulder, staring at the sky. The galactic community also reacted. Ambassadors from 30 different species sent messages to Earth. Most of them said the same thing. "We are sorry for your loss. We strongly suggest you seek a diplomatic solution. The Vreth are very powerful. Please do not do anything that makes this worse." Translation: "Please just let it go." Translation: "We are scared too, and we do not want to get involved." On the Vreth homeworld, the mood was very different. There was celebration. Drethkal returned as a hero. He stood before the High Council and received their highest honor. "We sent a message to the galaxy today," said the Vreth High Chancellor, a very old Vreth with white markings on his face. "Humans are soft creatures. They explore and they study and they talk. But when the time comes for real strength, they have none. The galaxy will remember what we did here. And they will know. The Vreth are not to be challenged," the crowd cheered. Drethkal stood straight and proud. But even as he smiled, something small moved in the back of his mind. A tiny thought. He ignored it. He was too proud to listen to small thoughts. The small thought was this: the humans have not said anything yet. The room where decisions are made. Deep under London, there was a room. Not many people knew about it. It had no windows. The walls were thick. No signal could enter or leave without permission. This was where the Earth Defense Council met when things were serious, and things had never been more serious than this. 12 people sat around a long table. General Helena Cross sat at the head. She was 61 years old, with white hair pulled back tight and eyes like cold steel. She had served in 2 interstellar conflicts before. She had seen what war cost. She did not like war, but she understood it. Around her sat scientists, politicians, military strategists, and one very quiet man named Dr. Obi Nwachukwu, who was the head of Earth's Advanced Research Division. No one knew exactly what his division did, but when he walked into a room, people paid attention. General Cross looked at the photograph of the burned message on her tablet. She looked at it for a long time. Then she put the tablet face down on the table. "So," she said, "the Vreth have killed our people and left us a message. I want to hear options, real options, not speeches." One man, a politician named Secretary Harlan, spoke first. "We should contact the Vreth and request formal talks. We are not in a position to fight them. Their military is larger, older, and more experienced. A war would cost us." "They killed 200 people," said someone else. 212, said General Cross quietly but firmly. "Say the number correctly when you talk about them." Silence. "I understand the argument for diplomacy," she continued. "But read the message they left. They did not make a mistake. They did not misunderstand our presence. They chose to attack and then they left that message. That is not a civilization that is open to a conversation. That is a civilization that is waiting for us to beg." Secretary Harlan shifted in his chair. "So what do you suggest, General War?" General Cross looked at Dr. Nwachukwu. He had not said a word yet. He looked up when he felt her eyes on him. "Doctor," she said, "tell them what you told me last week." Dr. Nwachukwu opened a small folder in front of him. He spoke quietly, the kind of quiet that makes everyone lean forward to listen. "The Vreth are strong," he said. "But they think in old ways. They understand big ships, big weapons, big armies. What they do not understand is patience, and what they do not understand is what humans have been building quietly for the last 20 years in case something like this ever happened." The room was very still. "What have we been building?" asked Secretary Harlan. Dr. Nwachukwu looked at him. "Everything," he said. One response. That evening, Earth sent one official response to the Vreth High Council. The galactic community waited nervously. 30 species watched their communication channels. Everyone expected Earth to threaten or plead or demand an apology. The message was 3 words. We received it. Nothing more. No threat, no plea, no anger. Just those 3 words. On the Vreth homeworld, Drethkal read the message and laughed. 3 words, he said, shaking his head. They send us 3 words, this is the great human race. His officers laughed with him. In the Galactic Council chambers, ambassadors shook their heads. Poor humans, said one. They do not even know how to respond to a provocation. They will be forgotten soon. But in that underground room in London, General Cross read the message one more time before it was sent. She nodded. Good, she said. Let them laugh. She looked around the table. From this moment on we go dark. No more public statements, no more diplomatic channels, no press releases, nothing. Let them wonder, let them wait. Because when we are ready, she picked up her tablet. She pressed her thumb to a scanner. A file opened. At the top of the file in large letters it said, Omega Protocol. Approved. She looked at it for one long moment. Then she closed the file and stood up. Get some rest, she told her team. We have a lot of work to do. She walked to the door. Before she left, she stopped and looked back at the photo of the burned message still sitting on the table. Humans are weak. We will come for your home next. She looked at it without expression. Then she turned off the light and walked out. The room went dark, and somewhere in deep space, 212 people waited to be remembered. They would not wait long. Silence is not always peace. Sometimes silence is a weapon. And Earth had just picked it up, the celebration that should not have happened, on the Vreth homeworld of Vreth Kara, The sky was always a deep shade of purple. 3 moons hung above the capital city, and at night they cast long silver shadows over the towers and temples of the most powerful civilization in the known galaxy. It was a beautiful world, an old world, a proud world, and right now it was a very loud world, because the Vreth were celebrating. 3 weeks had passed since the destruction of Kestrel 7. 3 weeks since Drethkal had burned his message into the floor of a dead human station. 3 weeks since Earth had sent back those 3 quiet words. And in those 3 weeks, nothing had happened. No human fleet appeared on their scanners. No human ambassador demanded a meeting. No human news channel broadcast angry speeches. Just silence. And the Vreth had decided that silence meant surrender. In the Great Hall of Victories, which was a massive room with walls covered in the trophies of 11 dead civilizations, Drethkal stood before a crowd of thousands. He wore his finest armor, dark and gleaming. His 4 arms were raised high. The humans had their chance to respond, he declared, his deep voice filling the hall. And what did they do? They sent us 3 words and went quiet. This is what happens when a young species faces an old one. This is what happens when the weak meet the strong. The galaxy is watching, and the galaxy has seen the truth. There is no power in this universe that can challenge the Vreth. The crowd roared. The sound shook the walls. Trophy cases rattled. Even the High Chancellor, sitting on his throne at the far end of the hall, nodded slowly with something close to satisfaction. Only one person in the hall did not cheer. He stood near the back, almost hidden by the crowd. His name was Yevtan. He was young for a Vreth officer, barely 40 years old by their count. He had gold eyes like all his kind, but his were different in a small way. They moved, they looked around, they noticed things that other Vreth eyes did not bother to notice. Right now those eyes were watching Drethkal celebrate, and Yevtan was thinking about something his old instructor had told him years ago during training. The most dangerous enemy, the old instructor had said, is not the one who shouts. It is the one who goes quiet and starts working. Yevtan thought about that. He thought about the 3 human words. We received it. He thought about the silence after, and he felt something in his chest that he had not felt in a long time. He felt afraid. What the galaxy was saying. The reaction from the rest of the galaxy was interesting. Most species were relieved. When Kestrel 7 was destroyed, many civilizations had held their breath. They feared a war between Earth and the Vreth. A war like that would not stay in one corner of space. Wars between powerful civilizations had a way of spreading, of pulling others in, of destroying things far from where the fighting started. So when Earth went quiet, many species exhaled. Perhaps the humans are wiser than we thought, said the Galian ambassador to the Galactic Council. They have chosen peace over pride. We should respect that decision. But not everyone agreed. Ambassador Sora of the Thessian people, a small but very old civilization known for their long memories, stood up in the same council meeting and said something different. I have studied human history, she said, her voice calm and careful. Human wars do not look like Vreth wars. The Vreth attack fast and hard and loud. Humans do something different. They go quiet first in their own history. Their most powerful military responses never came immediately. They came after a period of preparation, a period of silence. I am not relieved by Earth's silence. I am worried by it. Some ambassadors nodded, others shook their heads. The Galian ambassador dismissed her words. You are reading too much into nothing, he said. The humans are a young species. They are scared. Let us move on. Ambassador Sora sat down. She did not argue further, but she sent a private message to her government that evening. It said simply, watch Earth closely. Something is coming. The spy who did not come back. Drethkal was many things. Arrogant, yes. Proud, certainly. But he was not stupid. The silence from Earth bothered him just a little. Not enough to worry him, just enough to make him want to know more. So 3 weeks after the attack, he requested a mission from the Vreth Intelligence Division, 1 scout ship, a fast one, equipped with the best cloaking technology the Vreth had. The mission was simple. Fly toward Earth space, Observe. Report back. Find out what the humans were doing. The ship was called the Velshar. Its pilot was a veteran named Keth. He had done 30 covert missions before. He was one of the best scouts in the Vreth fleet. He set out on a Tuesday, by Earth's calendar, though he did not know that. He entered human territory slowly, carefully, keeping his cloak active. His orders were to observe only, no contact. No engagement, just watch. He sent his first report 20 hours into the mission. Approaching outer human territory, no unusual activity, will continue inward. That was the last message anyone ever received from the Velshar. After that, nothing. The ship simply vanished. No explosion was detected. No debris was found. No emergency signal was sent. It was as if the Velshar had flown into deep space and ceased to exist. Drethkal stood on the bridge of his warship and stared at the empty communication channel for a long time. "Send another ship," he said. His officers looked at each other. "Commander," said one carefully, "if the first ship was detected and destroyed with no sign of a fight, no wreckage, no signal, that means whatever humans used against it was very advanced. Sending another ship might—" "Send another ship," Drethkal said again, his voice flat. They sent another ship. It also disappeared. Same result. No explosion, no debris, no signal, just gone. This time, Drethkal did not say anything. He stood very still, and in his mind, something small but uncomfortable began to grow. He still refused to call it fear. He told himself it was just curiosity, but his forearms were not as relaxed as they usually were, lights that never go off. On a large asteroid in Earth-controlled space, there was a facility with no official name. Its coordinates were classified. Its workers were some of the smartest humans alive. And for the last 20 years they had been working on a project called Omega. Not many people knew about Omega. The politicians did not know the full details. Even most of the military did not know. Dr. Obi Nwachukwu knew. General Helena Cross knew. And the small team of scientists and engineers who had dedicated their careers to building it knew. After the destruction of Kestrel 7, the lights in that facility never went off. People worked in shifts, 8 hours on, 4 hours rest, 8 hours on again. They ate at their desks. They slept in small rooms just off the main work floor. They did not take vacations. They did not go home, because they knew what the Vreth did not know. They knew that what they were building was almost ready. A young engineer named Priya sat at her console 18 hours into a shift. Her eyes red and her hands moving automatically from long practice. The person next to her, an older scientist named Rolf, put a cup of tea down beside her without being asked. "Thank you," she said without looking up. "How much longer on your section?" he asked. "Maybe 40 hours, she said. He nodded. "We can do 40 hours. She looked up at him then. "Do you think what we built will actually work? Like, really work? Not just in the simulations?" Rolf was quiet for a moment. He looked at the numbers on his own screen. "I think," he said slowly, "that if it works the way I believe it will work, the Vreth will spend the rest of their history trying to understand how it happened, and they will never figure it out." Priya looked at her screen again. She almost smiled. "Okay," she said, 40 hours. Yevtan asks a question back on Vrethkara. Young Officer Yevtan did something unusual. He asked for a meeting with Drethkal. This was not something junior officers did. Drethkal did not particularly like junior officers. He liked obedience, and he liked silence from people below him. But something made him agree to the meeting. Maybe it was the disappearing scout ships. Maybe he was in a mood to hear something other than celebration. Yevtan walked into the commander's private chamber and stood straight. "Commander," he said, "I want to ask about the human silence." "What about it?" said Drethkal, not looking up from his maps. "I believe it is not weakness," said Yevtan. Drethkal looked up, his gold eyes fixed on the young officer. "Go on," he said, his voice careful and cold. Yevtan knew he was walking on very thin ice. He kept his voice steady. "I have studied human response patterns in historical conflicts," he said. "When humans are truly beaten, they talk, they negotiate, they plead, they send ambassadors, they make noise. When humans are preparing something, they go silent. They have been silent for 3 weeks. We have lost 2 scout ships with no explanation. I think they are not preparing to surrender. I think they are preparing something else entirely. The room was very quiet. Drethkal stared at him for a long time. Yevtan did not look away. Finally, Drethkal spoke. You are suggesting, he said slowly, that a young civilization of soft explorers and scientists is somehow preparing something that should worry the Vreth. Yes, Commander, said Yevtan. That is what I am suggesting. Another long silence. Then Drethkal stood up. He was taller than Yevtan, older and broader. He walked toward him slowly. Yevtan kept his eyes forward. Drethkal stopped right in front of him. You are either very smart, said the commander, or very young, I have not decided which. He walked back to his desk. Increase border monitoring, he said. I want eyes on every approach to our territory. Every single one. If anything moves in human space, I want to know. Yevtan nodded and turned to leave. And Yevtan, said Drethkal. He stopped. If you are wrong about this, I will remember that you wasted my time. If you are right, I will remember that too. Yevtan left the room. In the corridor outside, he allowed himself to breathe. He was still afraid, but now at least someone was listening. A message from Earth. 4 weeks after the destruction of Kestrel 7, Earth made its second and final public statement. The galactic community was waiting for it. Many species had representatives gathered around communication screens. What would Earth say? Would they finally respond with anger? Would they plead for peace? Would they announce a military response? The message came through at exactly noon, Earth Standard Time. It was read by a calm woman in a plain gray suit, standing behind a simple desk. No flags, no general standing behind her, no dramatic music, just a woman and a desk and a short statement. She said, To the Vreth High Council, to the galactic community, and to all who are listening. Earth has noted the attack on Outpost Kestrel 7. We have noted the 212 lives lost. We have noted the message left for us. We do not want war, but we remember everything. That is all. And then the screen went blank. That was it. 4 sentences. The galactic community erupted in confusion. What does that mean? Asked one ambassador. We remember everything, repeated another. What does that mean exactly? On the Vreth Homeworld, the High Chancellor dismissed the message with a wave of his hand. Words, he said. Empty human words. They remember everything. They say, so do we. And what we remember is that they did nothing. Drethkal said nothing. He read the message 3 times. He thought about the missing scout ships. He thought about what Yevtan had said. We do not want war, but we remember everything. He put the message down. He tried to go back to his maps. He found he could not concentrate. The objects in the dark. It was a Vreth border station called Outpost Vel 9 that first detected them. The station was positioned at the far edge of Vreth-controlled territory. A quiet posting, usually uneventful. The officers there had been watching the empty dark of space for months with nothing to report. And then, on an otherwise unremarkable evening, one of the monitoring officers sat up straighter in his chair. On his screen, there were dots, small dots, moving slowly. He blinked. He recalibrated his sensors. The dots were still there. More of them now that the sensors were properly tuned, many more. He counted quickly, then stopped counting because the number kept going up. He pressed the communication button with a hand that was not quite steady. Commander, he said, I have contacts on the long-range scanner. Many contacts, coming from the direction of Earth space. The station commander, a senior Vreth officer named Grath, walked to the screen and looked. He frowned. Speed? He asked. Very slow, sir. Much slower than any weapon. Much slower than any standard ship. Formation? Spread out, sir. Very spread out. They are covering a very large area of space. Grath stared at the screen. The dots were too small to be warships, too slow to be missiles, too many to count easily. What are those? Said Grath. It was not really a question. He was thinking out loud. No one answered him, because no one in the station had ever seen anything like this before. The officer at the scanner kept watching the dots move, slow, steady, spreading out in a pattern that he could not quite understand, but which somehow felt deliberate, like something being arranged, like something being put into place. He swallowed. "Sir," he said quietly, "should we alert the homeworld?" Grath kept staring at the screen for another long moment. Then he straightened up. "Yes," he said, his voice careful and controlled. "Alert the homeworld, alert the High Council, and alert Commander Dreth Kal. Tell them." He paused. He looked at the dots again, moving slowly, covering an impossible amount of space, still spreading, still arranging. He thought about the missing scout ships. He thought about Earth's message, "We remember everything." "Tell them," he said again, "that Earth is doing something, and we do not know what it is." He looked at the screen one more time. The dots were still spreading, still moving into position, still covering the dark of space like something being built. Something massive, something patient, something that had clearly been planned for a very long time. The young officer at the scanner stared at the screen and felt the same thing that Yev Tan had felt back in the celebration hall. The thing that no Vreth liked to feel. The thing they had not felt in 300 years. Fear, real, quiet, cold fear. The general smiles. In the underground room in London, General Helena Cross received a report. It was short, it said. Vreth long-range scanners have detected the deployment. They are confused. They are alerting their High Council. Phase 1 is complete. She read the report twice. Then she did something that her staff had almost never seen her do. She smiled. Not a big smile, just a small one. The kind of smile that holds a secret. She set the report down and looked at the wall across from her. On it hung a simple photograph, printed and framed. 212 names. Every person from Kestrel 7. She looked at the photograph for a moment. Then she looked at Dr. Nwachukwu, who was sitting across the table. "They are watching the objects," she said. "Yes," he said. "They are trying to figure out what they are." "Yes," he said again. "How long before they understand?" Dr. Nwachukwu thought about this. "They will not understand until it is too late," he said. "The technology is unlike anything they have seen. It will not match anything in their reference systems. They will spend days trying to identify it. By the time they figure out what even one of those objects does," he let the sentence hang. General Cross nodded. "Good," she said. She stood up. "Tell the team at the facility to move to Phase 2 preparations, and tell Captain Okafor to have the Halcyon ready. He has earned the right to be part of what comes next." She picked up her jacket from the back of her chair. "And tell everyone to rest tonight," she added. "Really rest, because after tonight it gets very busy." She looked one more time at the photograph on the wall, 212 names. "We are coming," she said quietly, not loudly, not angrily, just like a simple fact. The way you say the sun will rise because it will. The Vreth had fought many wars. They had always started them. They had always won them. But this was the first time they had ever felt the storm coming before they could see it. A normal morning that was not normal. On the Vreth homeworld of Vreth Kara, the morning of the 42nd day started like any other. The purple sky slowly brightened as the system's star rose. The 3 moons began to fade. In the capital city of Vrethsol, the streets slowly filled with people. Merchants opened their stalls in the great market square. Children walked to their learning centers in groups, talking and pushing each other the way children do everywhere in the universe. Workers boarded transport platforms that hummed quietly above the streets. The smell of Vreth morning food drifted from open windows. It was, by every measurement, an ordinary morning. In the military quarter of the city, Commander Dreth Kal was already awake. He had not slept well. He had not slept well in several nights. The objects in space and those slow, spreading, silent things that Outpost Vel 9 had detected were still there, still moving, still spreading. His best analysts had been studying them for 5 days now. They had theories, many theories, but no answers. The objects were small, roughly the size of a transport vehicle and made of materials that the Vreth scanners did not recognize. They moved under their own power but emitted almost no energy signature. They were spread across an enormous area of space, positioned in a pattern that the analysts kept arguing about. Some said it was a weapons array. Some said it was a communication network. Some said it was a distraction, something humans were using to take Vreth attention away from a real attack coming from another direction. Drethkal had increased monitoring in every direction because of that last theory. He had found nothing, just the objects, slow and quiet and completely impossible to understand. He was standing on his private balcony, looking at the morning sky, when his communication device activated. It was Yevtan. "Commander," said the young officer, his voice tight. "You need to see something, right now. Please." Drethkal had never heard Yevtan say please before. He went inside immediately. Every screen goes dark. It happened at exactly the same moment across the entire Vreth homeworld. Every screen went black, not just military screens. Every screen. The public information boards in the market square, the personal devices in people's hands, the large displays in government buildings, the entertainment screens in homes, the navigation panels in transport vehicles. Every single one. One moment they were showing their normal content. The next moment they were black. The streets went strange and quiet. People stopped walking and looked at their devices. They looked at the blank public screens. They looked at each other. In the market square, a merchant reached up and tapped the blank display above his stall. Nothing happened. A child in the street held up her personal device, turning it over in her hands, confused. In the military command center, alarms began going off immediately. Officers ran to their stations. Drethkal was already there, walking fast through the door with Yevtan just behind him. "Report," he said. "Every communication screen on the planet has been taken over," said an officer, his voice high and stressed. "We are trying to regain control, but something is blocking us. Our systems cannot get back in. Something is pushing us out and holding us out. We do not know how." "Every screen," said Drethkal. "Every screen, sir, the whole planet at the same moment." Drethkal stood very still. He thought about the objects in space, the ones that emitted almost no energy, the ones arranged in a pattern no one could identify. He thought about the missing scout ships. He thought about Earth's message. "We remember everything." "They are going to say something," said Yevtan quietly, standing just behind the commander's shoulder. Drethkal did not respond, but his jaw tightened. 1 second passed, 2 seconds, 5. And then, on every screen on the Vreth homeworld, a face appeared. It was a human face, old, calm, with white hair and eyes like cold steel. General Helena Cross looked out from every screen on the planet of the most powerful military civilization in the galaxy, and she spoke in perfect Vreth language. Her accent was flawless. Her voice did not shake. "You attacked our people," she said. 212 lives gone. We gave you 3 weeks to respond. You celebrated instead. This is the result." Then the screens went black again, and stayed black. The objects were not what they thought. In the military command center, for approximately 4 seconds, no one moved. No one spoke. Then Drethkal said very quietly, "Get me a full scan of every object in space around us now." The scan came back in less than a minute. The officer reading it went pale, or the Vreth equivalent of pale, which was a slight fading of the blue in his skin. "Commander," he said slowly, "the objects they are not spread across general space. They are arranged around us, specifically around Vrethkara. They form a complete sphere around the entire planet." No one spoke. "How many?" asked Drethkal. The officer checked his screen twice before answering. 47,000, sir." The room was completely silent. 47,000 objects surrounding the homeworld. While the Vreth had been looking at them and wondering what they were, the objects had been quietly moving into position, a perfect sphere, around the entire planet. "What do they do?" asked Drethkal, his voice very controlled. "We still do not know exactly," said the officer, "but based on the energy readings now that they are fully activated." He stopped. "Say it," said Drethkal. "We believe they are gravity anchors, sir." Each one generates a localized gravity field. Together, 47,000 of them arranged in a sphere. They would create a gravity barrier around the entire planet. Anything that tries to leave the planet, any ship, any object, would be pulled back. The barrier would be strong enough that even our most powerful engines would not be able to push through it. We would be... He hesitated. Trapped, said Yevton quietly. No one contradicted him. The Vreth fleet fires Drethkal did not panic. To his credit, he did not panic. He did what any great military commander does when faced with an unexpected situation. He acted. Get every warship in orbit, he said. Fire on those objects, destroy them. If they generate gravity fields individually, destroying enough of them will break the barrier. Move. Within minutes, the Vreth fleet was in position. Hundreds of warships rising from the planet and from the orbital stations, arranging themselves in battle formation. They were impressive, even now. Even in this moment of crisis, the Vreth fleet was an impressive sight. The kind of sight that had made 11 civilizations give up before the first shot was fired. They fired. The Vreth fleet opened up with everything it had: beam weapons, projectile weapons, explosive weapons, energy burst weapons. Every type of weapon the greatest military civilization in the galaxy possessed. It was by any measure an enormous amount of firepower, and the gravity anchors absorbed all of it. Every beam reflected away, every projectile was deflected, every energy burst dissipated against the surface of the small objects as if it had never happened. The anchors were not damaged. They did not even move, they just kept floating there, perfectly still, doing their job. Drethkal watched the display screens as his fleet's weapons did nothing. He watched for 3 full minutes, then he said, "Stop firing." The fleet stopped. The anchor spheres remained. "Commander," said an officer, "our weapons are having no effect. The surface material of the objects, it is not a shield. It appears to actually absorb and redirect energy. Everything we fire at them comes back changed, unusable, gone. We do not have a weapon in our arsenal that would damage them." Drethkal stood quietly. He was thinking. He thought about what Yevton had said weeks ago. "I believe it is not weakness." He thought about the missing scout ships, gone without a trace, no debris, the same material that absorbed every weapon his fleet could fire. Had it also simply absorbed 2 entire Vreth scout ships? He thought about Dr. Nwachukwu, though he did not know the man's name. He thought about the fact that humans had built 47,000 of these objects, each one individually useless, all of them together making the greatest military fleet in the galaxy completely helpless. Not by beating them in a fight, by making the fight impossible. He thought about 20 years of human silence, humans working quietly in space, building something no one knew about. He had thought they were young. He had thought they were soft. He was beginning to understand that he had been thinking about entirely the wrong things. Other civilizations. Try to help. The news spread fast. Within hours, every major civilization in the galaxy knew what was happening at Vreth Kara. The reaction was unlike anything the Galactic Council had ever seen. Some species were shocked. Some were secretly pleased. The Vreth had threatened many of them over the centuries, and no one had ever been able to do anything about it. Some were terrified of what this meant for the balance of power. Ambassador Sora of the Thessian people sat in the council chamber and watched the emergency session with an expression that was not quite satisfaction, but was very close to it. She remembered what she had said weeks ago. When humans are preparing something, they go quiet. She had been right. Several civilizations attempted to contact Earth immediately. They wanted to intervene. They wanted to negotiate on the Vreth's behalf. They wanted to stop whatever was coming next. The Aurelian Confederation, a large and influential group of 12 species, sent an urgent message to Earth's government. The message said, "We urge restraint. The Vreth attack was wrong, but total destruction of a homeworld civilization would set a dangerous precedent. We offer to mediate. Please respond." Earth's response came back in under an hour. It said, "We appreciate your concern. We are not destroying a homeworld. We are delivering a consequence. This is between Earth and the Vreth. Please do not interfere." The Aurelian Confederation sent another message. Earth did not respond to it. 3 other civilizations tried to contact the Vreth fleet and offer technical support. 2 of those communications were quietly intercepted and blocked before they arrived. No one was entirely sure how. The third got through, but when the Vreth engineers tried to apply the suggested countermeasures, they discovered their own systems had been updated overnight with security patches they did not install. Every countermeasure was blocked before it could be implemented. Somewhere, human engineers were watching Vreth systems in real time and staying 10 steps ahead. Ambassador Sora, watching all of this from the council chamber, said nothing, but she sent another private message to her government. It said, "Do not interfere. Trust me on this. Just watch." Drethkal makes the call. It took Drethkal 2 hours to accept what his officers had been telling him for 2 hours. They were trapped, not in danger of being destroyed. Not yet, but trapped. Every ship that tried to push through the gravity barrier was pulled back. The barrier showed no sign of weakening. The anchor objects showed no sign of damage, and somewhere beyond the barrier, though his long-range scanners could not find them, he knew human ships were out there, watching, waiting. He stood in his private chamber and he thought about his choices. He could keep trying to break the barrier. He could keep firing. He could send ships in every direction at once and hope that something worked. But his fleet had already fired for 3 hours and accomplished nothing, and he was beginning to understand something important about human military thinking. The gravity barrier was not an attack. It was a statement. It was Earth saying, "We can do whatever we want to you and you cannot stop us." The actual attack, whatever it was going to be, had not started yet. And that thought, more than anything else, was what finally made Drethkal pick up his communication device and do what he had never done in his entire life. He called Earth. He asked to speak to whoever was in charge. He was connected to General Helena Cross in less than a minute. Her face appeared on his screen. She looked exactly the same as she had looked on every screen on the planet, calm, unhurried, like she had all the time in the universe, which Drethkal was beginning to understand she did. He straightened. Even now, even in this moment, he was Drethkal. He did not bow his head. He did not show weakness in his posture. "General," he said, "you have made your point. Your technology is impressive. We are willing to discuss terms." General Cross looked at him for a moment. "What terms are you offering?" she asked. "A formal apology for the incident at the human outpost," he said. And the word incident cost him something. Reparations to the families of those lost. Recognition of human territorial rights in Sector 9. "Commander," said General Cross, and her voice was not unkind, but it was very firm. "Those are the terms you should have offered 3 weeks ago. I asked for nothing 3 weeks ago. I gave you silence and time. You used that time to celebrate." Drethkal's gold eyes flickered slightly. "Then what do you want?" he asked. General Cross was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. "Commander," she said, "we are not here to negotiate." She turned slightly in her chair. To someone off-screen she said, quietly but clearly enough for the microphone to pick up, "Begin Phase 2. Then the screen went black. Phase 2. Yevtan was standing in the command center when Phase 2 began. He was not sure what he expected. More weapons, perhaps. More objects appearing in space. An ultimatum. What he did not expect was for absolutely nothing visible to happen. No new ships appeared on the scanner. No weapons were fired. The gravity anchors kept floating in their perfect sphere but did not change. For approximately 4 minutes, nothing happened at all. And then one of the officers said slowly and with great confusion in his voice, "Commander, I am receiving reports from our military bases. From all of them. Something is happening at the bases. I can't." "What?" said Drethkal sharply. "I can't get through to them, sir. The communications are going dark. Base by base, Fel Station Prime, dark. Outpost Harith, dark. The 3rd Fleet's orbital base, dark. The weapons depot at Sector 12, dark. They are going dark one after another, and I cannot reach anyone at any of them." Drethkal felt something he had never felt in his entire life. Not fear exactly. Something older than fear. Something colder. "How many bases?" he asked. The officer looked at his screen. He looked at it for a long time. "All of them, sir," he said finally. His voice was barely above a whisper. All of them. Every Vreth military installation in the galaxy. All going dark. At the same time. The command center was absolutely silent. Yevtan stood very still. He thought about what he knew of human history. He thought about a concept he had read in human military texts during his studies. They called it coordinated simultaneous action. The ability to strike many targets at exactly the same moment so that no warning could travel from one target to another in time to help anyone. To do that across an entire galaxy required technology and planning and coordination that he had never believed any civilization possessed. He had underestimated them. They had all underestimated them. Drethkal stood in the middle of his command center, surrounded by officers who did not know what to do, with a fleet that could not leave, military bases going dark across the galaxy, and a blank screen where a human general's face had been. He stood very straight. He kept his forearms at his sides, he kept his face still, but in his gold eyes for the first time in his long and proud life something had changed. Something was gone from them. The absolute certainty. The belief that had lived there since his first day in uniform, that the Vreth were untouchable. That certainty was gone, and in its place was something very simple. Understanding. The galaxy watches. In the Galactic Council chamber no one was speaking. Every ambassador from every species sat in silence, watching the reports come in. Vreth military base after Vreth military base, going dark, not destroyed. The early reports made that clear. The bases were disabled, not demolished. The personnel were alive, but every weapon system, every ship, every piece of military equipment in every base across the entire galaxy was simply no longer functional. All of it. In 1 hour, Ambassador Sora sat in her chair and looked at the data streaming in. She had studied humans for 20 years. She thought she understood them. She realized now that she had only understood part of them. She had understood their patience. She had understood their silence. She had not fully understood the scale of what they were capable of when they finally acted. The Galian ambassador, who had dismissed her warnings weeks ago, sat very quietly beside her. He did not look at her. She did not say, "I told you so." She did not need to. Around the chamber, in many languages and many tones, one sentence was being whispered from ambassador to ambassador. Not a threat, not a question, just a fact, slowly being understood by every civilization that was watching. Do not attack Earth's people. The greatest victories are not always the loudest, sometimes the most powerful thing in the universe is the silence after the storm. The morning after. The sun rose over Vrethkara on the 43rd day. It looked exactly the same as it always had. The purple sky brightened slowly. The 3 moons faded. The streets of Vrethsol were quiet. Not the comfortable quiet of an early morning, the uncomfortable quiet of a world that does not know what to say. People stood in their doorways and looked at the sky. Some of them looked at the places where screens used to work. The screens were back on now, but no one felt like looking at them, because the screens showed the news, and the news showed what had happened to every Vreth military base in the galaxy. In 1 hour, all of them. Gone dark, not destroyed but dead. Every weapon system offline, every ship engine locked, every military computer showing the same message, in plain Vreth language on every screen in every base across the entire galaxy. The message said, Kestrel 7, 212 lives we remember. Nothing else. No demands, no instructions, no threats. Just those words, and that somehow was worse than any threat. In the Great Hall of Victories, where Drethkal had celebrated just weeks ago, it was very dark. The lights were on, but the room felt dark. The trophies on the walls, the remnants of 11 destroyed civilizations, looked different now. They looked like what they were, old things from dead worlds. Not proof of strength, just old things. Drethkal sat alone in the hall. He had been sitting there since the early hours of the morning. His forearms rested on his knees. His gold eyes were open, but he was not really looking at anything, he was thinking. For the first time in a very long time, Drethkal was genuinely thinking, not planning, not strategizing, just thinking. About 212 people on a small outpost, scientists and engineers and doctors, people who had not been soldiers, people who had not been a threat. He had called them weak. He had burned that word into the floor of their broken home. He sat in the dark hall and thought about that word, and for the first time he understood something. Weakness had nothing to do with it. It never had. Yevtan walks through the ruins. 3 days after Phase 2, Yevtan was given permission to travel to one of the disabled military bases, Base Harith 9, which was one of the largest Vreth military installations in the Outer Territories. It had housed 40,000 soldiers and over 300 warships. When Yevtan arrived, he walked through it slowly. The base was not destroyed. That was the thing that struck him immediately. The buildings were all standing, the ships were all there, the equipment was all present. Everything was exactly where it should be, except none of it worked. The ships sat in their docking bays, silent and cold. The weapon systems were locked in a state that Vreth engineers could not reverse. The computers showed only that one message on every screen. Kestrel 7, 212 lives we remember. 40,000 soldiers were still at the base. They were not hurt. They had not been attacked. They had simply woken up on the morning of Phase 2 to find that everything around them had stopped working. Yevtan walked through the silent docking bay and looked at the ships. A young soldier, barely old enough to be in uniform, was sitting on a crate near one of the grounded warships. He was not doing anything, just sitting. Yevtan stopped in front of him. "Are you all right?" he asked. The young soldier looked up. "I don't understand," the soldier said. His voice was not angry, it was genuinely confused. "We have the biggest fleet in the galaxy. We have the best weapons. We have more ships than anyone. How did they just turn everything off? How did they even know where all our bases were? How did they do it all at the same time? I don't understand." Yevtan looked at the young soldier for a moment. He thought about what to say. He thought about everything he had studied, everything he had observed, everything he had understood, while others around him were celebrating. "They planned," he said finally. "They planned for a very long time, and they were patient, and they were quiet, and we did not take them seriously. That is how." The young soldier looked at the ground. "Do you think they will come back?" he asked quietly. "Do you think they will finish it?" Yevtan looked around the silent base, at the grounded ships and the locked weapons and the message on every screen. "I think," he said slowly, "that they already finished it. I think this is exactly what they wanted. Not our destruction, our understanding." The young soldier did not look convinced, but Yevtan was. He walked on through the silent base, and with every step, a thought was forming in his mind. A thought that would eventually change everything. The Galactic Council meets. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the largest gathering of ambassadors in over a century. Every species sent their highest representative. Some sent two. The chamber was full in a way it had never been full before. Ambassador Sora of the Thessian people sat near the front. She had been asked to speak first, which was unusual. Normally, the largest and most powerful civilizations spoke first, but something had changed in the chamber. The old order of who was powerful and who was not had shifted overnight, and everyone in the room knew it. She stood and looked around at the assembled representatives of 37 civilizations. 3 weeks ago, she said, I told this council that human silence was not weakness. I told this council to watch Earth carefully. Most of you did not listen. That is fine. I am not here to say I was right. I am here to say something more important. What Earth did to the Vreth military, all of it in 1 hour, across the entire galaxy, without a single death on either side, should tell every civilization in this room something very clear. Humans do not want to dominate us. If they did, they would have done so already. The technology they used against the Vreth, the gravity anchors, the simultaneous system lockdowns, the ability to take over every screen on an entire planet. They built all of that quietly, over 20 years, without telling anyone. They built it as a defense, and they only used it when they had to. That is not an empire. That is a warning. And the warning is simple. Leave their people alone. The chamber was quiet when she finished. Then the Galian ambassador, who had dismissed her weeks ago, stood up. He looked older than he had before. I would like to formally request, he said, his voice careful and measured. that this council send a delegation to Earth not to negotiate, not to protest, simply to acknowledge what has happened and to open a new conversation between our peoples. A conversation based on a new understanding of who humans are and what they are capable of. Heads nodded around the chamber. Many heads. Ambassador Sora sat down. She looked at her hands. She thought about 212 people whose names she had memorized after Kestrel 7. She had memorized them because she felt it was important, because someone outside of Earth should remember them. She was glad she did not need to remember them alone anymore. The Vreth leader comes forward. On the 5th day after Phase 2, the Vreth High Chancellor made a public address, not to the galaxy, not to the Galactic Council, to his own people. He stood in the Hall of Victories under the trophies of 11 civilizations, and he spoke. He was very old. He had been High Chancellor for 60 years. He had seen wars and victories and the rise of Vreth power to its greatest height. He had never in his life given an address like this one. He spoke for a long time. He spoke about pride, about how pride was important, about how the Vreth had built their civilization on pride and strength and the belief that power meant the right to decide. And then he said something that no Vreth leader had ever said in recorded history. He said they had been wrong, not weak, not defeated, wrong. We destroyed a station of scientists, he said, his old voice steady and clear. They were not soldiers. They were not a threat. They were in the wrong part of space, perhaps, but that is not a reason to kill 212 people. And the message we left them, that message. He paused. He looked at the trophies on the walls. I have looked at those words many times in the past weeks. Humans are weak. I was looking at the wrong species when I wrote that assessment. The Vreth have confused cruelty for strength for too long. They are not the same thing. We attacked the weak because we could, and it turned out they were not weak. But even if they had been, that still would not have made it right. That is what I want our people to understand. Not that we lost, but why we were wrong before we lost. The hall was completely silent. Somewhere in the back, a Vreth soldier who had been at base Harith 9, sitting on a crate staring at a ship that would not start, heard those words and felt something shift inside him. Not shame. Something more useful than shame. Understanding. General Cross speaks on Earth. The reaction to the High Chancellor's address was complicated. Some people were satisfied. Some people wanted more. Some people wept. Because no speech from any Vreth leader could bring back 212 people, General Helena Cross gave her own address the following day. She did not stand behind a grand desk. She stood in a simple room. Behind her on the wall was the photograph she kept in her office, 212 names. She spoke directly to the camera. The Vreth military has been disabled, she said, not destroyed. Their people are safe. Their world is intact. The gravity anchors around Vreth-Kara have been deactivated, and our ships have withdrawn. Earth does not want territory. Earth does not want tribute. Earth does not want to rule anyone. We want what we have always wanted, to explore, to learn, to build, and to live in peace. We extended that peace to everyone in this galaxy. We ask only that it be extended back to us. The 212 people of Outpost. Kestrel 7 were our people. They were scientists and engineers and doctors and human beings. They had families. They had names. We will not forget them. We ask the galaxy not to forget them either, because that is why this happened. Not power, not politics, not territory. 212 people, remember them. She paused. She looked at the camera. That is all. She walked away from the podium. The camera stayed on the photograph behind her for a moment before the broadcast ended. 212 names, on screens across the galaxy, in 37 civilizations, in hundreds of different languages. People read those names. Some of them, for the first time. What Drethkal did next. On the 7th day after Phase 2, Drethkal did something that surprised everyone. He resigned his commission. No announcement. No ceremony. He simply walked into the High Chancellor's office, laid his rank insignia on the desk, and walked out. He went home. He had a house outside the capital city that he had not visited in 11 years. It was small by Vreth standards, It had a garden that had grown wild in his absence. He went out into the garden on his first morning home and looked at the overgrown plants for a long time. Then he started clearing them. He worked all day, his forearms moving steadily through the work, pulling weeds, clearing dead growth, making space for things to grow properly. It was not a military operation. It was not a strategic decision. It was just a man in a garden doing something real and quiet and small. His neighbor, an old Vreth woman who had lived next to the house for decades, came to her fence and watched him for a while. "I wondered when you would come back," she said. "I am back," he said. "What will you do?" she asked. He kept working. "I am not sure yet," he said. "Something useful. Something that does not involve burning messages into the floors of dead stations." The old woman was quiet for a moment. "My grandson was at base Harith 9, she said. "When everything stopped working, he came home yesterday. He is 22 years old, and he cried when he saw me. I have not seen him cry since he was a child." Drethkal stopped working. He looked at her. "Is he all right?" he asked. "He is changed," she said. "But he is alive. And he is thinking now instead of just following orders. Maybe that is worth something." Drethkal looked at the garden, at the work still to be done. "Maybe it is," he said. He went back to work. Yevtan looks up. 1 month after Phase 2, Yevtan was standing outside base Harith 9. The base was still quiet. Vreth engineers had been working on the systems every day. They had made almost no progress. The human lockdown was complete and thorough and built in a way that Vreth technology simply could not reverse. Earth had said, through quiet diplomatic channels, that the systems would be unlocked slowly over time, as the new relationship between Earth and the Vreth developed, not as punishment, as a process, a way of building something new instead of just going back to what was before. Yevtan understood that. He stood outside and looked up at the sky. It was a clear night on this part of the planet. Stars everywhere. He had loved stars since he was young. That was actually why he had joined the military. Not for power, not for pride. Just to go out there into that enormous dark and see what was in it. He had gotten lost somewhere along the way. He heard a sound, a quiet hum high up. He looked up. A ship was passing overhead. Not a Vreth ship. The lines were different, smooth in a different way. It moved through the night sky without any lights, just a dark shape against the stars. Quiet and steady and unhurried. A human ship. Just passing, not attacking, not threatening, not even acknowledging the base below. Just moving through the sky the way something moves when it belongs there. Yevtan watched it until it disappeared beyond the horizon. He kept looking at the sky after it was gone. He thought about the young soldier he had spoken to in the docking bay. How did they just turn everything off? He thought about what he had said. They planned, they were patient, they were quiet, and we did not take them seriously. He thought about the High Chancellor's address. We have confused cruelty for strength for too long. He thought about General Cross standing in front of 212 names, remember them? He thought about all of it, and then he stopped thinking and just looked at the stars. The same stars humans were out there among right now. Exploring, learning, building, being patient. He made a decision standing there. He did not know exactly what it would look like yet, but he knew the shape of it. He was going to learn everything there was to learn about humans, not to fight them, not to find their weaknesses, but to understand them, because a civilization that could build 47,000 gravity anchors in secret over 20 years, that could disable an entire galactic military in 1 hour without a single death, that could take over every screen on a planet and use that power to say only 6 sentences and then give it back. That was a civilization worth understanding. That was a civilization that had figured out something important, something the Vreth had missed. He was not sure yet what to call it, but standing under the stars, watching the place where the human ship had disappeared, he thought maybe the word was wisdom. The years that followed, in the years after what historians would come to call the Kestrel Reckoning, many things changed. The Vreth did not disappear. Their civilization continued. Their people went on with their lives. But something fundamental had shifted. The High Chancellor's address was taught in Vreth schools, not the old way, not as a lesson in strength and power and the right of the mighty to decide, but as a lesson in something harder to teach, the difference between strength and cruelty. The Vreth military was rebuilt, slowly under new rules that Yevton helped write, because Yevton eventually rose to a position where his voice mattered. He was not a perfect Vreth in the old sense. He asked too many questions. He took too long to decide. He had an irritating habit of considering how things would affect people who were not Vreth, but those were exactly the qualities the new Vreth needed, and slowly, imperfectly, with many arguments and setbacks and moments of going backward before going forward, they became something different. Not a lesser civilization, a better one. On Earth, the 212 names of Kestrel 7 were placed on a memorial in the main hall of the Earth Defense Council, not in a military building, in a public square in Geneva, where anyone could walk past and read them. People left flowers there, small things, a coffee mug once which made the maintenance staff smile when they found it, because Commander Sarah Voss had been known apparently for her cold coffee. Someone who loved her had remembered. General Helena Cross retired 4 years after the Kestrel reckoning. She went back to the small town in Canada where she had grown up. She grew vegetables. She read books. She slept well for the first time in years. On her last day in office, she walked past the photograph of 212 names in her office one final time. She stopped. She looked at each name, all of them. She had looked at them so many times that she knew them all by heart. But she looked again anyway, because they deserved to be looked at. We remembered, she said quietly. Then she turned off the light and walked out. The last word. Somewhere in deep space, far from any homeworld, a small human research station floated quietly among the stars. It was called Outpost Kestrel 8. It had been built a year after Kestrel 7 was destroyed, built in the same region of space. Not because Earth was making a statement, not because they were being defiant, but because the science was important and the work needed to be done and humans did not stop doing important work, because someone had tried to make them afraid. The station had 230 people on it. Scientists, engineers, doctors, not soldiers. The commander of Kestrel 8 was a young woman named Dr. Amara Osi. She had applied for the posting 6 months after Kestrel 7. When people asked her why she wanted to go back to that region of space, she said the same thing every time. Because someone has to, and because they would have. On her desk, next to her console, she kept a small printed card. It was not official. It was not a regulation. She had printed it herself and taped it up the day she arrived. It said, 212, we remember, we continue. On a quiet evening, station time, she was sitting at her desk reviewing star charts. Her coffee was cold, as always. There was never time to finish a hot cup. She looked up from her charts and looked out the observation window at the stars. The same stars Commander Sarah Voss had looked at from this same region of space. They were beautiful. They were always beautiful. Her communicator buzzed. A young engineer named Torres. Commander, he said, we are picking up some interesting readings from the next sector over. Probably nothing, but I thought you should know. Amara looked at the reading. She smiled slightly. Keep monitoring it, she said, and let me know if it changes. Yes, Commander. She looked back at her cold coffee. She took a sip. Outside the window, the stars held their silence, and somewhere among them humanity continued its quiet, patient, endless work, exploring, learning, remembering, moving forward, the way it always had, the way it always would. The end.